Hello everyone. This is Pastor Kim Sean. I'm turning on this video today for a very special time. I recently visited Israel, and while I was there, I heard an astonishing story from someone who accompanied me. I felt it would be wonderful to share this with all of you. So I've invited our sister, who is here beside me. First, sister, I would appreciate it if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Lee Min Young.
Sister, shortly after you started attending our church, we went to Israel together, didn't we? Your testimony about experiencing heaven and hell in Israel was so astonishing. I really want to share that testimony with you in depth. Before we get to the hell testimony, could you briefly explain when your spiritual life began?
I attended church continuously from elementary school. My mother used to go to church as well, so I went from elementary through middle and high school. However, once I reached high school, I stopped going regularly. On Sunday mornings in high school, my mother would wake me up and nag me to go, and I would barely drag myself out of bed. Even then, I didn't go every week, and when I did go, I just barely managed to attend the service. Back then, I lived exactly like the people of the world. I never once thought that way of living was sin. It was only after I got injured that I realized how I had been living was indeed a sin.
So, while it seemed like a normal spiritual life at the time, it was actually just religious observance, not a true spiritual life.
Yes, that's right.
Then, there must have been a major incident in your early 20s that caused this complete change in your spiritual life. Could you please explain that incident in detail?
It was June 2002, when I turned 22, right in the middle of the Korea-Japan World Cup. I remember talking on the phone with a friend in our apartment, which had a corridor-style layout. But I don't remember anything after that.
You don't remember the specifics of how you were injured, so you learned about the situation later through investigations?
Yes. They told me I fell from the corridor onto the ground floor garden, where I was later found.
What floor did you say you fell from?
I was on the 13th floor.
You fell from the 13th floor?
Yes. Everyone said it was a miracle. Just surviving was a miracle.
You fell from the 13th floor onto asphalt?
I was so shocked when I saw the photos later. They showed me the picture, and where I landed was dirt. And the spot directly in front of me was paving stones. Just one step ahead was the sidewalk. So, I guess I survived because I landed on the dirt.
In a situation like that, falling from the 13th floor, wouldn't the survival rate be less than 1%?
Yes, that's right.
And the doctors reportedly said there was almost no chance of saving you?
Yes. The injuries I sustained were my C1, C2, and C3 vertebrae fractured, causing nerve damage. My left shoulder was broken. My right wrist and fingers were broken. Plus my right hip and my spine were fractured. I was broken all over. I had no memory of that time, so I only heard what the doctors told my family later. They said that typically, anyone with C1 and C2 fractures dies immediately. But since I didn't die right away, they told my family I would likely die within 2 or 3 days at the longest. So, even though neck surgery was technically impossible, they decided to try it. Knowing I might not wake up from the anesthesia anyway, that's how the surgery was done.
So, the surgery went well, and that's why you are alive today.
The surgery was successful, but they initially told my family I would live with complete paralysis. They said that with C1, C2, and C3 fractures, I wouldn't even be able to hold up my head and would only be able to speak. With my entire body paralyzed, even after the surgery, I could only move my left foot slightly. The rest of my body was completely paralyzed. However, while I was in the hospital room, as a genuine miracle, my nerves kept regaining function, which even the doctors found astonishing. They had said that if the nerves didn't recover within 6 months to a year of the injury, they wouldn't recover at all. But mine kept coming back.
You seem to be moving quite naturally now.
My left hand is fine, but my right hand is still difficult. Even after the nerves recovered, my right side remained paralyzed. And that is the side where I currently have a disability. Both my arms are somewhat uncomfortable because both my joints are artificial joints. Then, exactly 7 years after the surgery, One night while sleeping, I suddenly felt my body become light. My right hand, which had been completely immobile and stuck in a tight fist, started to open up little by little like this. It couldn't open this much before. After that, I was able to start driving a car by holding the steering wheel with my right arm as well.
You can drive now?
Yes, I drive. I used to only drive with my left hand. But now I can drive with my right hand too. Since that day, my right hand gained strength, and I drive with it. A few months ago, I gained even more strength in my front toes. And the nerves keep recovering. That's why the doctors were so amazed. The doctors initially said there was no hope of survival, and then later said I would be completely paralyzed and unable to move. But now, remarkably, you see me moving.
Sister, when you experienced this amazing miracle, it wasn't just physical healing. I heard that you met the Lord in a real way during the recovery process. Could you explain how you met the Lord and experienced the amazing process of restoration?
When I was injured, I had some strange experiences. But I honestly didn't understand them at the time. I only realized the truth after being discharged. I had experienced hell while lying in bed. At the time, my life was in danger to the point where I could have died. But I was completely unaware of any of that. When I simply opened my eyes, I was in a hospital. I could see the nurses. But my whole body ached terribly. So I thought, what is this situation? Is this a dream? I squeezed my eyes shut and opened them again. The situation was exactly the same. I was very flustered. Then I heard my mother's voice, crying, and I realized it was my mom. I thought, what is this? And then, in the middle of that situation, I suddenly found myself in a strange place. A large white wall appeared before my eyes, and written on it were the details of my entire life, packed so tightly together. As I looked at it, I saw things that only I knew, things no one else knew. Yet, even those things were written down. I was so shocked, thinking, how do they know that? As I was thinking that, I felt like someone was with me. I wasn't alone because I heard a sound. A man's voice, right next to me, making a clicking sound with his tongue. I also heard the voices of some women who were reading what was written and speaking to me in a way that seemed to mock and ridicule me. Saying things like, so this is how you lived? Huh? This is how you lived. They were mocking and ridiculing me using the record of my life. The next day, I was lying down again. But I felt like I was elevated. I could see a leg, and that leg was choking my neck. I felt suffocated and couldn't breathe. Since the leg was choking my neck, I could see it with my eyes. And it looked dark blue, almost rotten and completely black. It was continuously pulling my body down and then pulling it back up. A voice came from above, saying, should I drop her down? I still vividly remember that voice. It was eerie and unpleasant. Because I was lying down, I couldn't move my body. But I could see a little out of the corner of my eye. When I looked down, there was a huge knife below us. They were pulling me back and forth, debating whether to drop me onto it. I was terrified and frozen, but then, off to the front, I saw my father. My father had no faith at the time. I saw him frantically nailing wooden planks into a wall, yelling, where is God? If God exists, make my daughter live. He looked extremely angry, and I was being held by the man, unable to move. Suddenly, the surroundings went quiet, and a thick fog rolled in. Then, my body, which was lying down, was moved sideways a long way. After that, I realized I had broken free from that man. The leg around my neck was gone, and I could breathe much more easily without the tightness. I thought, I've been moved. Then a voice was heard. It was very gentle, soft, with a deep, resonant tone. It said to me, why do you resent me so much? Why do you not believe me? I will save you. Then, I looked down, and although I couldn't see a face, I saw medical staff gathered around, treating someone. I was watching it with them, and at some point, I found myself on that very bed. I saw the medical staff gathered above me, treating the body. I thought while lying on the hospital bed, why do I keep going to these strange places? I'm lying in a hospital. So I thought, is there something wrong with this hospital? Or maybe something is wrong with the ICU. So, whenever a nurse, or my mother, or a friend came to visit, I kept pestering them, saying, "Please, let me out of here. Let me out now." Begging them, "Please, get me out of here."
So, when you closed your eyes, you would open them to find yourself in another place?
I could see it even while my eyes were open. So, I really hadn't lost consciousness. When I wasn't in those strange places, I would communicate with the nurses using lip reading because I was on a ventilator and couldn't speak. I'd be with the nurses. And then suddenly I'd be having another one of those strange experiences. It was maddening. One time, I saw a man. Many people were lying down together. This man was standing to one side, giving orders. "You go this way, and you go that way." People were moving involuntarily, going wherever he directed. This man looked like a normal person, but he had a pig's snout, and he was holding a huge trident. Eventually, it was my turn, and he said to me, "You go this way too." As soon as the words left his mouth, my body slid down like on a waterslide to somewhere else. The place I landed felt like a huge pit, roaring with fire all around. I was inside it. I felt tremendous fear and intense heat. I wanted to get out, but I couldn't move or leave. So I kept screaming and wailing, "Let me out! Let me out of here!"
These experiences weren't just once, you experienced them multiple times over several days.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I kept going to these strange places until the day I left the ICU. I was in the ICU for 8 days, and I kept having these experiences until then.
You vividly experienced people burning in the fire?
There were other people there with me, and I was among them, screaming. I can't properly describe how hot and burning it was. I vividly felt it, but I'm frustrated that I can't convey it fully.
At that time, you didn't think that place was hell?
I didn't think that. I only thought, why am I here? Why am I in this strange place? I only thought about wanting to leave and asking to be let out. The next day, I was in a room with walls on all 4 sides. I was stuck to the wall, hanging up high. There were many people stuck to the wall, packed tightly, just like me. When you're stuck like that, you can look down. Below, crocodiles were moving back and forth. So everyone, including me, was quiet, holding their breath out of fear of the crocodiles. Then, an incredibly strong wind blew from one side, and with the wind came a huge swarm of needles that pierced my entire body. It felt incredibly sharp and painful. Even being pricked by a thorn hurts terribly. But feeling needles pierce my whole body was vividly real. As the needles pierced me, blood would come out, drop by drop. The crocodiles smelled the blood and raised their heads to look in my direction. I was instantly terrified and shocked, but I couldn't run away. I was stuck to the wall, unable to move. The crocodiles smelled the blood and started coming up. One crocodile grabbed my left thigh and pulled me down sharply. I was dragged down. There were many other crocodiles below. So as I was dragged down, other crocodiles tore off one of my arms. Another tore off the other arm. And another tore off my leg. They were tearing off and carrying away all my limbs. My face and torso were all that remained. And another crocodile grabbed my face and torso, dragging me around. I clearly remember the belly and the back legs of the crocodile that was moving. Those images are still vivid before my eyes. That's why I still can't look at crocodiles now. Remembering that time, while being dragged around by the crocodiles after having all my limbs torn off. I thought, how can a person not die after having all 4 limbs bitten off? I even thought, I wish I could just die. And I tried to die by holding my breath and not breathing. But I just wouldn't die. I realized then that being forced to endure terrible pain without end is true suffering.
It wasn't just simple pain. It was the despair of knowing the pain had no end that completely broke you down.
I felt true despair, and since I couldn't escape from there.
At the time, you didn't know that place was hell. But now you know for certain that it is hell. We only hear about the feeling that this hell is eternal through words or sermons. But the sense of despair when you actually experience it, that would be impossible to express in words, right?
Yes, it truly is beyond words. That pain repeats itself. We often hear in sermons that hell involves repeated torment. And that is absolutely true. There was a tall, strong-looking man with a very large mouth filled with a mouthful of metal balls. He would hold the balls in his mouth and then spit them at me. Then, the sharp barbs on those balls would pierce my entire body. He would then take the ball back. And since flesh would be torn off where the ball was stuck, my flesh was ripped apart. And I felt the pain as it was. But this process repeated continuously. I was constantly being tormented and in pain. But there was no end to it. As I mentioned, it wasn't just one experience. I kept going to strange places and experiencing torment repeatedly while I was in the ICU. I was subjected to suffering continuously as I was moved to hell. And it wasn't just one type of torment. I experienced many different kinds.
How many days were you in the ICU?
8 days. It felt like several years to me.
Did you have any other experiences after the crocodile incident?
Yes, I did. Later, after I was discharged, my family told me about things I said while I was in the ICU. They said that during the crocodile incident, I told my mother and older sister to be quiet because there were crocodiles there. I was lying in the hospital bed, and I could see my mother sitting next to me. Just like how I'm speaking now, I was speaking then. It was something I experienced while awake, not in a dream. The same was true when I experienced the pack of lions. I saw many people before me, and behind them, a pack of lions was charging. The people were terrified and ran toward me. As they got close to me, sharp spikes began descending from above, like a fence. The people running towards me were impaled on the spikes. But they wouldn't die. They were screaming and crying out in agony from the pain. But the most gruesome part was that a person's head was impaled on a spike just one step in front of me, with the spike going through the back of their head and coming out through their eye, right in front of their face. Seeing it up close was so vivid and horrific. That person was screaming, and because the people were blocked by the spikes and couldn't escape, the lions came and tore them apart. And I heard their screams and cries for help. The smell of blood was thick in the air. I watched this from inside the spikes, thinking it was horrific and so pitiful.
Did your parents have faith at that time?
My father did not, but my mother had been attending church since I was young. When I was injured, she was praying at a church right below the hospital. My mother fell asleep while praying at that church. And she heard a voice in a dream saying, "I will save your daughter. Don't worry." So, even though the doctors said I would die in 2 or 3 days, my mother said she was no longer worried after that. She believed her daughter would certainly live, no matter what the doctors said.
Your mother's prayers were at work.
Yes, my mother prayed continuously. I had one more experience. It was completely dark all around, and I was lying on top of a long tunnel, tied up with a rope, which felt suffocating. While I was hanging from the rope, I could hear my mother's voice from outside. She was repeatedly calling my name. At that moment, the thought suddenly struck me. I must sing a hymn to get out of here. I don't know why I thought that, but the thought came to me. As soon as I started singing hymns, my body began to move down little by little. I thought I had to keep singing, so I sang heartily. Then, I heard a man's voice. That man said to me, "Why are you singing? Min Young, you don't have to sing." I thought, is it okay if I stop singing? But then I heard my mother's voice. "Min Young, no, don't listen to him. Keep singing, keep singing." I decided to listen to my mother and kept singing. But there was a feeling of being forced down, suppressed from singing, which made it hard to sing. Then I heard women's voices too. They were saying to me, "Min Young, it's too hard, isn't it? It's okay to stop singing now." At that point, I was so exhausted, and hearing those words, I thought it was okay to stop. But my mother said again, "No, don't listen to them. Keep singing, Min Young, keep singing." So, even though it was so hard, I listened to my mother and kept singing. As I continued to sing the hymn, I saw a light below where I was lying. I thought, I have to get to that light. I have to get there to escape this place. So I sang with all the strength I had left. As I sang the hymn, my body kept going down. Then, at some point, I felt the rope binding me snap with a thud. As my body descended and got closer, I saw the bed, and my body was laid down onto the bed. Then I heard my mother's voice saying, "Well done, Min Young, well done." Hearing my mother's words brought a sense of relief. That's how I ended up back on the hospital bed.
At that time, Sister Min Young, even though you didn't have deep faith, through your mother's prayers and the words you heard, you actually experienced the power of song that could save you from the midst of hell?
Yes, singing hymns truly caused my body to move down. And I realized then that they were interfering with my singing. I was about to stop singing because I listened to the man and women's words. The power of prayer and song felt real on the last day in the ICU. Although I didn't know it was the last day then. It was my last experience in the ICU. I felt like my body was under the bed, slowly moving upward, but I heard the women behind me screaming, "Don't let Min Young go." They were shouting. I could feel them getting closer to me. So I was thinking, I can't let this happen. Go up faster, please go up quickly. But at some point, I was grabbed by that man. I knew I was grabbed because I felt like my neck was being squeezed. As soon as I was grabbed, my body started descending back under the bed. The man said to me, "Let's go back. It's too precious to let you go." When I heard those words, I felt utter despair, thinking I would truly never escape from there. I wept and pleaded, "Please, let me out of here. I don't want to go. Please let me out." But the women spoke to me nicely. "Let's go back. We'll treat you well if you go back. We won't hurt you next time either." They were dragging me along while saying this, when suddenly a foul, rotten smell filled the air, and I heard a sound. It sounded like chanting an incantation. I didn't want to follow it, but against my will, I started chanting it, and I kept going down. At that moment, my mother entered the hospital room, sat in a chair next to my bed, and kept touching my right leg while speaking. I couldn't hear the sound, only see her lips moving. I saw my mother continuously doing that. After some time, the surroundings suddenly grew quiet, and someone from the front said, I couldn't see the person, only hear the voice. "Huh? Going because of mom. Going because of mom." Then the man said to me, "Farewell, and never come back to this place again. When you get out into the world, you will forget the sound of this chant too." After he said that, I felt the pressure around my neck release, as if he had truly let go. My body, which had been going down, immediately started moving back up onto the bed. The women behind me shouted, "No," as I went up, as if they were extremely regretful at losing me. As my body came up, I thought, I have finally escaped from here. As I was almost back on the bed, I felt a sensation of piercing a thin film. The moment I pierced it, I felt the refreshing air we are breathing now, not the rotten smell. From that moment, I could hear people talking. Before, I could only see the lip movements of the nurses, but not hear their voices. During the other experiences, I only heard sounds. Now, I could hear the sound. The first thing I heard a nurse say to me was, "Min Young, our country won the game today." I didn't know the situation, so I just listened. She then congratulated me, saying it was time to move me to a regular room. At that time, my mother was still touching my leg when the nurse told her, "It's time to move Min Young to a regular room today. So please go buy the necessary supplies." My mother was overjoyed. After I was moved to the regular room and the ventilator was removed, the first thing I asked my mother was, "Do you remember the day I was leaving the ICU?" "Yes, I remember, dear. You were wearing a light green t-shirt that day. I remember exactly what you were wearing. What were you saying while constantly touching my leg?" My mother replied, "I was praying." At that moment, I got goosebumps, realizing that what I saw, heard, and experienced was not a dream or a vision, but real. And I realized that I was able to get out because of my mother's prayers. I experienced hell, you know. They usually say that when people become disabled, a lot of people fall into depression. But I never became depressed because I was so grateful just to have escaped that hell. Even though I was in so much pain and even sustained a disability, I was just too thankful for having gotten out of there. My mother told me to write down what I experienced around 2004 after I was discharged from the hospital. She told me to document it. She said, "The time will come when you might share your testimony." But I never thought I would actually be giving this kind of testimony. When I show what I wrote to the people around me and tell them that hell is real, they don't believe it. My older brother and sister don't really believe it either. Even though it's something their sibling went through, they still don't quite believe. For a while now, I've just been thinking, God will make them hear it. So I simply share it. I share it at work, and I share it at gatherings. I hope people realize through this interview that hell is truly real. This remaining life is a life that God has given back to me. So I'm truly trying to live only for the Lord.
Your testimony was so vivid, and hearing it firsthand gives me goosebumps. It feels so real. I believe that when this interview is shared, many people will realize that heaven and hell are real. As someone who experienced it, you know better than anyone that we must never go to hell. Could you give us one final word?
When I attended church, I claimed to truly believe in God, right? Except for a part of high school. I went to church diligently and even sang in the choir. But I was in hell. That made me wonder, how many of the many people who attend church diligently are truly saved? I realized, attending church isn't everything. Living like ordinary people is also sin. We must repent and strive to live according to God's will. And in Matthew chapter 188, it says, "If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire." That scripture is absolutely true. That's why I am so thankful now. Even though my body is inconvenient and I have a disability, I have to remain in that terrible place where I can never escape hell for eternity. So I truly hope no one ever goes there. Because I truly experienced it. I can say this with certainty. I hope none of you ever go to hell.
Sister's testimony was so real. I hope that by listening to this story, you will deeply realize that heaven and hell are real, and that we will all repent and return to the Lord, just as Jesus taught, because the time is near.
If this message was helpful to you, please press the like button and subscribe so you can join us in the future. Please introduce this story to your friends. It will surely be helpful to them as well. May God's grace and thanksgiving be with you in your life today.